the whole time saying, Dad, we're being careful, we're doing everything you're telling us to. But they weren't. And they're blaming me for the choices that they had. They were not culpable.
The peaceful stillness of Flagstaff was shattered by news no one saw coming: Robyn Brown. Once the crown jewel of Kody Brown's affection was ordered to leave the home she shared with him. Not suggested, not discussed, ordered. The word alone carried a sting, a finality that signaled a permanent rupture in the already fractured Brown family. And as the quiet corners of their once sprawling plural household echoed with whispered questions and stunned silence, one truth became undeniable. The veil had finally been lifted. Kody Brown had awoken to the truth that the world had been trying to tell him for years. For decades, the Brown family sold a vision of unity. For wives, 18 children, a plural household built not just on faith, but on an insistence that this way of living was functional, supportive, and, in its own way, beautiful. But that illusion started crumbling the moment Robyn arrived. Robyn was different from the start, more emotionally available, more demanding, and, as it turned out, more entitled. Kody, swept up in what looked too many like infatuation, became a different man around her. He smiled more, laughed more, seemed lighter, as if he had rediscovered some long-lost spark. But that spark came at a cost, and that cost was the slow erosion of the relationships he had with his other wives, Meri, Janelle, and Christine. While they tolerated Robyn's arrival at first, hoping that time and experience would even the playing field, it quickly became clear that Robyn was not interested in sharing space equally. Kody spent more nights with her than with all 3 other wives combined. Robyn's children were showered with gifts that dwarfed what others received. Her home was immaculate, fully furnished, modern, and always came first for upgrades. Christine and Janelle began to pull away, emotionally detaching from a man who no longer saw them. Meri, for a time, clung to hope, but even she couldn't deny the favoritism that was transforming their family into a hierarchy. Then came the pandemic. What should have been a time for unity became the ultimate dividing line. Kody invoked health regulations to justify moving in with Robyn full-time. He created elaborate rules for his other wives and children, isolating them emotionally and physically. But those rules somehow didn't apply at Robyn's house. The hypocrisy was deafening. The betrayal cut deep. Christine was the first to act, refusing to continue feeling like an outsider in her own family. She left. Janelle followed not long after, tired of being invisible. Even Meri, Kody's first wife and 4 years his most loyal supporter, finally said she was done. Still, Kody refused to see the pattern. He blamed Christine's departure on her attitude. He criticized Janelle's independence. He blamed the media, the culture, his children, everyone but the person at the center of it all: Robyn. Robyn, whose presence had slowly and thoroughly restructured the family dynamic. Robyn, whose access to Kody was unlimited, whose wants always took precedence. Robyn, who wielded power and influence Kody never gave to the others. It wasn't just the wives who noticed. The children, especially Janelle's sons, Garrison and Gabriel, began to speak out. They felt abandoned by a father who no longer prioritized them. Daughters stepped away emotionally, mourning the lack of a relationship with a father who showed up only for Robyn's kids. Even Robyn's own children began to sense the hostility and division, unsure how to interpret their mother's rising defensiveness and increasing anxiety. The tipping point came in the form of a financial bombshell. Kody, already struggling to maintain multiple households, was overwhelmed. That's when Robyn, in what many saw as the ultimate betrayal, suggested selling the homes of the other wives and consolidating under her roof. The suggestion, reportedly leaked by one of the older children, was not just tone to fit, was destructive. It validated every suspicion the others had harbored. Robyn wasn't just Kody's favorites, she was calling the shots, dismantling the family from within. The confrontation came on a muggy summer evening at Coyote Pass. Kody called a family meeting. Christine showed up with her new husband, David Woolley. The other wives arrived cautiously. The adult children sat down, their expressions a mix of skepticism and exhaustion. Kody stood before them, visibly rattled, the lines on his face deeper. The weight of his choices finally beginning to settle in. He took a deep breath and did something no one expected. He admitted he had been wrong. "I allowed this family to fall apart," he said, his voice trembling. "I let my love for Robyn cloud everything. I hurt my wives. I hurt my children. I failed you all." Robyn sat stunned, clutching her youngest child, visibly shaken. The silence was deafening, until Christine broke it. "You allowed her to destroy us," she said calmly. Kody didn't argue. "I know," he said, eyes downcast. And then came the statement that would change everything. He turned to Robyn and said, "I think it's best if you and the kids find somewhere else to live, at least for now. I need space to rebuild the relationships I've broken, and I can't do that with you here." Robyn's gasp was sharp and immediate. You can't mean that," she whispered. But he did." And in the weeks that followed, Robyn and her children quietly packed up and left. Moving vans arrived. Neighbors watched in stunned silence. Paparazzi swarmed. Her children, confused and hurt, couldn't understand why the very family they were told was theirs had suddenly turned them away. Meanwhile, Kody began to make amends. He visited Janelle, helped her fix things around the house, and spent time with Garrison and Gabriel. He invited Meri out to lunch and apologized not with excuses but with sincerity. He sat down with Christine and David and offered respect and humility. Even David, once viewed as competition, was told, "You're a better man than I've been. Thank you for loving Christine the way I never could." Robyn remained silent for weeks. No interviews, no posts, no public statements. But eventually, she granted an interview to a local paper. Tearful, she said, "I never wanted to hurt anyone. I just wanted my kids to feel loved. It pushed me out because they couldn't handle that Kody loved me. But too many, it rang hollow. Too little, too late." And even Robyn's oldest child, Dayton, quietly acknowledged what many had felt. "We got more," he said. "It didn't always feel right, but it's what happened." Kody, for the first time, stepped away from the spotlight. He began therapy. He hosted dinners. He checked in on each child. He stopped making grand promises and instead focused on simple acts of presence. He built, finally, at Coyote Pasnot, a mansion but a gathering space. A neutral place where all the children and grandchildren could gather, cook, laugh, and just be. He made it clear, no favorites, no divides, just family. This wasn't just a redemption arc. It was a reckoning. Kody had lived blind to the damage he was causing. But in asking Robyn to leave, he made a sacrifice he never thought he could. And in doing so, he planted the first real seed of healing. Robyn, now in a modest rental on the edge of town, began her own quiet journey, one marked by introspection rather than entitlement. She spent time with her children, no longer surrounded by luxury, but by reality. Janelle flourished. Her independence was her superpower. Christine glowed, her life with David Woolley thriving. Meri, unexpectedly, began dating again, discovering new joy and strength. The children once scattered began returning, not all, at once, and not with total trust, but with open minds. The Brown family was far from whole, but they were moving, not backward, not sideways forward, toward honesty, toward authenticity, toward healing. Because the truth is, family isn't about control, it's about connection. And sometimes the only way to reconnect is to tear everything down, face the rubble, and rebuild brick by painful, hopeful brick.
Fact that, you and Robyn really did have that deep love. And I think that was really rooted in some of the accountability that you did not.
You cannot.
And in all those years, through all the shifting tides of loyalty and broken promises, Kody Brown never once said no to Robyn. Blinded not just by affection, but by obsession. He poured every available dollar into her comfort, rearranging budgets, sacrificing long-term plans, and ignoring the increasingly loud protests echoing in silence from the others who were barely scraping by. And it didn't go unnoticed. The other wives saw it. The children whispered about it behind closed doors. What began as subtle favoritism had become an undeniable hierarchy. And Robyn sat at the throne while the others quietly watched their contributions, sacrifices, and years of patience be reduced to afterthoughts. The breaking point wasn't just a single event, but a culmination and avalanche built over years of inequality and emotional neglect. As the bills continued to pile up, Kody spiraled into desperation. Frantic and ashamed, he borrowed money from dwindling sources, sold off assets he once swore he'd keep for the family's future, and tried to renegotiate contracts tied to the dream that was Coyote Pass dream, now reduced to dust and empty promise. But nothing worked. He was trapped. The final blow came with a phone call, one that chilled his spine, a stern voice from the bank warning that foreclosure was imminent on Robyn's home. The very house he had fought to maintain for her comfort, the home he promised would never be taken, was about to be lost. And so, in what could only be described as a moment of ego surrender, Kody did something he hadn't done in years. He asked for help, swallowing years of pride, arrogance, and missteps. He turned to the women who had once stood beside him through the chaos, Meri and Janelle. He believed somewhere deep inside that they'd remember the good, that they'd recall the nights around the fire, the years of shared parenting, the cold winters endured as a unit. Maybe they'd save him. Maybe they'd save Robyn's home. So he called Meri first. Racing to her modest rental on the outskirts of town, far cry from the elaborate comfort Robyn enjoyed, he rehearsed his words repeatedly on the drive, battling nerves, fear, and the ghost of all the things left unsaid. Meri opened the door with a tired kindness, not unwelcoming, but not familiar either. Her home smelled of lavender and independence. She offered him tea. He declined. They sat across from each other, an ocean of old wounds between them. "Meri, I know things haven't been good," he started, voice cracking, "but I'm in trouble. Robyn's house sits in foreclosure. I just need a little help. Just something to catch up, please." Meri listened, hands folded calmly, her eyes never breaking contact. When he finished, silence held the room hostage. Then she simply shook her head. "Kody, I can't help you." He blinked, stunned. "What do you mean?" "We're still family," but Meri cut him off gently but firmly. "We were family. But you made sure to draw the line when you pushed me aside. You humiliated me. You erased me from your life while I was still living in it. You picked her? Every single time, and now you want me to fix the consequences of the choices you made for her? No, I won't do it." Her words hit like a storm. Kody's breath caught in his throat, tried to plead, to dig through the ashes of shared memories. But Meri was unmoved. "You made your choices. Now it's time to live with them," she said, walking him to the door with quiet finality. The door clicked shut behind him, like the closing of a chapter. Still reeling, Kody drove to Janelle's. She had always been the calm one, the level-headed partner, the rock that kept the family from splitting at the seams. Surely she would see the urgency, the bigger picture. But as he sat at her kitchen table, surrounded by a life she'd rebuilt without him, he sensed the shift. This wasn't the Janelle who used to run finances late at night beside him, worried about bills and groceries. This was a woman who had outgrown the chaos. "Janelle, please," he began, desperation bleeding through his voice. "Robyn and the kids, if I don't pay, they lose their home. I just need a loan." "You're good with money, loan or give," she interrupted, eyebrow raised. "Let's be honest, Kody. You've never paid me back before." He flushed. "This time's different, I swear." But Janelle shook her head. "No, Kody, I'm not doing it. Not again. When I needed support, when our kids needed you, you weren't there. You chose her every time. And now you want me to clean it up while she still lives like a queen? No, absolutely not." Kody leaned in, trying to tug at the only card he thought might work. It's about the kids. But Janelle's eyes hardened. We all have kids, Kody. You just forgot most of them. He fell silent. No more arguments, no more bargaining chips. Just the crushing reality of consequences. As he sat alone in his car afterward, staring at the steering wheel with clenched fists, he felt a loneliness so sharp it cut through bone. His phone lit up repeatedly. Robyn. He ignored it at first, unable to face her panic. But finally, with a sigh that seemed to carry the weight of decades, he answered. "Did you get the money?" she asked, voice trembling. They both said no. He replied, his tone flat and empty. A gasp on the other end. "What are we going to do?" She whispered, and for the first time he had no answer. In the days that followed, Kody spiraled further. He reached out to friends, distant relatives, old business acquaintances, anyone who might offer a lifeline. But the walls were already closing in. The word had spread. People knew. And nobody wanted to be the next casualty in Kody and Robyn's slow motion implosion. And all the while, Robyn's resentment grew. She lashed out in private, blaming Meri and Janelle for abandoning the family when it was falling apart. But deep inside, even she knew they hadn't walked away from family. They had walked away from a mess that she and Kody had nurtured. One cold evening, Kody stood at the edge of Coyote Pass, the wind slicing through him like judgment. The land once promised to hold their legacy now stood empty and unforgiving. No houses, no laughter. Just broken dreams and a man finally confronting the cost of his delusions. And then came the fallout from the children. As whispers turned to headlines, his kids took to social media with thinly veiled rage. Gabriel posted, "Funny how some people expect you to save them after pretending you didn't exist for years." Madison was even more direct. Maybe if he'd been a father to all his kids and not just Robyn's, he wouldn't be in this mess. Leon added quietly, "Choices have consequences," and the press had a field day. Paparazzi gathered outside Robyn's home. Cameras caught every moving box, every angry outburst, every tear-streaked face. Then came the explosion. One day, unable to contain it anymore, Robyn cracked. Outside her house, she was filmed sobbing uncontrollably, screaming into her phone. "You promised this would never happen," she shrieked, throwing her hands into the air. Moments later, Kody pulled up, eyes sunken, face haggard. He tried to console her, but she pushed him away, yelling, "Everyone was right about us." And in that moment, the illusion shattered. The neighbors heard, the children saw, and Kody stood dumbfounded, realizing he hadn't just failed as a provider, he had failed as a father, a husband, and a man. He saw it in the eyes of Robyn's children, fear, confusion, sadness. He'd chosen love but lost everything else along the way. He'd ignored warnings, turned away from advice, dismissed those who had once held him up. Now he was broke, abandoned, and asking for help from those he had wounded. And so, with nothing left but humility, he made the most difficult decision of his life. He called a family meeting, one final plea for healing. He invited everyone to Coyote Pass. Wives, ex-wives, children, all came, though many wore defensive looks and folded arms. Standing on the empty land that once symbolized unity, Kody finally dropped every mask. "I let you all down," he said, voice cracking. "I let pride and ego and my love for Robyn blind me. I took you for granted. I hurt you, and I'm sorry." Silence engulfed the group like a storm cloud. Then Janelle, voice soft but resolute, said, "Sorry doesn't fix everything, Kody, but it's a start." Meri nodded slightly. "You have serious work to do." Christine, Hand and David Woolley simply added, "May you find peace." A few of the children offered tentative smiles. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a beginning. Except for Robyn, tears in her eyes, arms crossed. She whispered, "You destroyed everything. You promised we'd be a unit. But in the end, You favored them more than me." And with that, she walked away. Her children followed quietly behind. Her Kody stood still, the wind rustling through the barren field. And though the future was uncertain and redemption would be long and painful, for the first time, he had chosen truth over illusion. And maybe, just maybe, that was the beginning of something new. Something new.
I had a hard time getting work off for my own wedding because I couldn't tell my boss that I was getting married. Again, I had a wife.
He sold Robyn's house, moved into a modest apartment, and began taking whatever odd jobs he could find to slowly chip away at the mountain of debt that loomed over him like a shadow from his former life. But something shifted, perhaps out of desperation, or maybe the first spark of realization, because for the first time in years, Kody Brown started showing up, not just for Robyn's children, but for all of his kids. He attended birthdays, graduations, hospital visits, and even sat through therapy sessions with Janelle and Meri, not as their husband, but as a man trying to rebuild bridges he'd spent years burning. And when he called Christine and her husband, David, the tone had changed. It was no defense, no blame, just a humble apology, a recognition of pain caused, and a plea for forgiveness. The public fall of Kody Brown wasn't just tabloid drama, was a reckoning. A man once inflated by pride and entitlement was finally learning that love isn't bought with grand homes or lavish gifts. That respect must be earned, and that trust, once shattered, doesn't simply regrow, must be nurtured day by day with humility, patience, and consistent truth. Slowly, with time, the Brown family began to recalibrate. Janelle and Meri allowed Kody back into their lives, not as a romantic partner, but as a co-parent, a family figure, someone worth knowing again if he stayed accountable. The romantic chapter had closed, but a new one began, centered around shared history. The children they'd raised and the unspoken acknowledgement of everything they'd survived. Christine settled into her joyful life with David, didn't forget the past, but she also didn't shut Kody out entirely. For the sake of the kids, she welcomed him at family events and even managed occasional small talk that no longer carried venom. Robyn, after much reflection and silence, did the same. Not to reignite a romance, but to create a co-parenting space where their children didn't have to suffer the same fractures. But just as the dust was beginning to settle, another story was forming quietly in the background. One that would once again ignite the internet and expose just how raw and unhealed some wounds still were. This time, it wasn't about the parents. It was about Brianna Robyn's daughter, once hidden from the limelight, now thrust into it after a short but intense scene aired during a new season of Sister Wives. In it, Brianna, now a teenager, was shown crying uncontrollably during a family meeting at Coyote Pass, pleading with everyone to stop being cruel to her mother. "She's just trying to hold the family together," she sobbed. "Why can't you all just stop being so mean?" Internet exploded within hours. Social media was flooded with memes, side-by-side images of Robyn and Brianna both crying. Captions like mother, like daughter, and tissue sponsorship incoming, gaining viral traction. She was dubbed Crybaby Brianna, Robyn 2.0, and worse. Some people defended her, noting she was still just a kid, reacting emotionally to a family tragedy of years-long division. Others were ruthless, calling her a manipulator in training and blaming Robyn for raising her to weaponize emotion. A Reddit thread quickly went viral. "If you raise your kids to cry their way out of everything, don't be surprised when people call them out." And yet beneath the snark and vitriol was a far deeper truth. Brianna wasn't trying to be a villain. She was trying to protect the only parent she believed had stood steady in a storm of collapsing relationships. Family insiders revealed that Brianna had always been intensely protective of Robyn, that from a young age, she'd seen her mother cry behind closed doors, heard whispered insults, watched the women bicker, and internalized the chaos as something she needed to fix. She believed her tears could heal what the adults kept breaking. Crying wasn't manipulation for Brianna. was her language, her power, her defense. When the episode aired and the backlash hit, Kody was uncharacteristically silent at first. Then he broke. "That's my daughter," he said, voice sharp with pain, "and I won't let strangers tear her apart." He later posted on Instagram, defending Brana as a sensitive, beautiful soul and shaming those mocking her vulnerability. Robyn, unsurprisingly, was devastated. In a follow-up interview, she wept again, not performatively, but raw and maternal, pleading with the public, "Leave my children out of this. If you have a problem with me, fine. But don't punish my daughter for loving me." But her plea didn't quell the storm. Critics argued that Robyn had made emotion a family currency, and now her daughter was paying in full. Some believed Brana was old enough to understand the consequences of inserting herself into adult conflict. Others believed she was used as a shield, intentionally or not, to evoke sympathy. Amid the storm, the rest of the family began to weigh in. Christine, now known for her calm wisdom, expressed sympathy. "She's just a kid," she said in a confessional. "I don't agree with how Robyn has handled things, but Brana's pain is real. She's caught in something bigger than her." Janelle, however, was more direct. "This is what happens when you raise a child to believe the world is against them. We all contributed to this mess, but shielding her from truth doesn't prepare her for life." Meri remained publicly silent, but sources claim she was seen watching the episode and visibly rolling her eyes at Brana's scene. Even the children had opinions. Gabriel, in private messages to friends, was blunt. "We all dealt with stuff. You don't see the rest of us falling apart on TV?" Madison was gentler, tweeting, "People need to stop harassing her. But someone also needs to tell her crying doesn't fix everything." Even Dayton, quiet and rarely public, posted something cryptic but telling. "Sometimes silence is stronger than tears." In response to the social media firestorm, Kody called another family gathering at Coyote Pass. It was tense. Everyone was there: Christine with David, Janelle with her sons, Meri sitting in stoic silence, and Robyn arriving last, clutching Brana's hand tightly. Kody launched the meeting with fire. "Say what you want about me," he said, "but don't come for my child." Christine, ever calm, reminded him, "We can't control the internet, but we can teach Brana how to handle it better." Janelle added sharply, "Maybe if you all stop treating tears as solutions, she'd learn a better way to express herself." Robyn broke down again, sobbing, "So now my child's pain is my fault too." Brana in tears herself, surprised. "Everyone," she found her voice. "I know people think I'm weak because I cry, okay? But I cry because I care. I love this family. I love my mom. When you hurt her, it hurts me. Maybe I don't know how to say it right yet. At least I feel something." Her words, sincere and unrehearsed, cut through the tension like a thread of clarity. Even her harshest critics paused. That night, after the dust settled, Kody and Robyn decided Brana would begin therapy to better process emotions and navigate the online world. Robyn began teaching her daughter other tools besides tears: language, strength, balance. Brana, for her part, created a private Instagram page where she posted poetry and thoughts. One post read, "They say I cry too much. Maybe they don't. Cry enough. At least my heart works." Thousands responded, many with support. The narrative started to shift. Some still mocked, but many began to defend her. "She's a child born into a war zone of emotional chaos," one Redditor wrote. "She didn't choose the cameras. She didn't choose the dysfunction. She's just trying to survive it." Brana, once dubbed Robyn 2.0, was beginning to be seen as her own person. Someone young, raw, and maybe a bit overly sensitive, but someone with heart. Someone real. Months passed. The storm calmed, but the scars remained. Kody, for once, stayed quiet and in the background. Robyn stopped posting emotional rants and focused on helping Brana grow. Brana herself started classes at a local community college, pursuing psychology. In her own words, maybe if I learn how emotions work, I can help kids who feel like I did lost in a family that didn't know how to love loudly without breaking things. Her latest post, a photo of her smiling, captioned, "Still crying sometimes, but also laughing now." Learning it's okay to be both. And in that quiet strength, in those trembling steps forward, Brana reminded viewers that this wasn't a story about crying. It was a story about surviving, about growth, about generations trying to heal from wounds they didn't create. Behind every tear was a girl who held her mother's pain, her father's neglect, and the weight of the internet's cruelty, and still found the courage to speak. In the end, Brana Brown might just be the heart of a family that forgot how to feel. Not a copy of her mother, but a girl growing beyond her shadow, learning, standing, and slowly becoming someone who doesn't just carry emotion, but understands it. And that is a legacy worth building. For more heartfelt breakdowns behind the scenes, truths, and raw family reflections, stay tuned to Starspill USA, where the untold stories of the Brown family always come to light.